Well, Nick, it was what, like 5 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we were ready to sit here and open up a vein about a team that was 2-4 and underachieving and doing all the things that Belichick teams don't do, unforced errors, self-inflicted wounds, turnovers, or whatever. And now, as we sit here and record, we're fresh off the Atlanta game, another 25-0 win. Even where they didn't play their best ball and still won 25-0, which just doesn't happen in this league. And then a weekend slate of games that have the Patriots, as we sit here, Thanksgiving week, in first place in the AFC East. And now the rest of the country, the other 44 states, are all collectively opening a vein. And it's a beautiful thing. We have much to be thankful for this holiday.
Yes, we do. I mean, the people, they always played us off. I mean, were you really shocked? We didn't take a year off. We took a COVID year. We just opted out of last year. That was a training year for us. And guess what? We came back and we're right back where we were. I mean, we've always been 20 years in the making.
Yeah, it's absolutely the right take. Like, they had a down year because they had a thin roster. They led the league in opt-outs. They had to sign Cam Newton in like late June or whatever. And Julian Edelman gets hurt, so he's done. And then the fact that they've turned it around this fast, when the whole world thought, okay, well, it's the Bills division going forward. And until the Bills say otherwise, as long as they keep that team together, the Patriots are just, they're yesterday's news. We're finally rid of them. We waited all this time for Tom Brady to go or retire or whatever. He left for Florida. Clearly, they've been exposed that it was his team all along and nothing else that they did mattered. And now for the last week, 2 weeks maybe, I've listened to people say that Mac Jones isn't that good. It's just the system. It's like last year never happened. Like, their takes on how it was Brady all along and Belichick has failed and he's been exposed as a fraud. It's like they never said them. And this is the greatest part of it all. It's like they've turned everybody's brains into origami, that they can just turn them into any friggin' shape that they want. And what have they got? They've got a Buffalo team that, while not in free fall, their chute hasn't opened yet. We watched them go against Indy at home, and with one guy to stop, really. There was not a chance that the Bills were worried that Carson Wentz was going to beat them, that anything was going to happen through the air. They loaded up on Jonathan Taylor, who now is in the MVP talk. And sure, you want to talk about a running back, go nuts. And they were physically incapable of stopping him. It wasn't scheme. It wasn't that they were caught by surprise. They loaded up to stop him, and they got pushed off the field. And how are the Patriots built? With size and big running backs that can push anybody off the field. It's like as Emperor Palpatine said, everything is transpiring according to my design.
Yep. I mean, look at the Colts O-line, they're good. But look at the Patriots O-line compared to the Colts. We just got Trent Brown back. We are going to absolutely massacre that defense. They couldn't even handle the Colts offense. Like, Carson Wentz has been a bum for 2 years now. One of the biggest busts in the NFL.
Yeah, he threw 106 yards and was taken off the field for a backup quarterback at the end because they didn't need a quarterback. They actually could have just put anybody back there to just hand off. I think I heard that
I don't know about anyone there, Jerry. I think you're getting ahead of yourself. I don't think they would put Mark Sanchez back there.
No, I'm saying just to hand off, because they had no intention. In fact, it was said that they tried like a play action or something at one point and just said, and Frank Reich just said, you know what, enough of this. I'm not going to throw on first or second down the rest of the game. So they had 18 first and second down plays the rest of the game, and he almost kept to the promise. They ran the ball 17 times out of those 18 times, and still Buffalo couldn't stop them. Like, they weren't doing any trickery. They weren't trying to keep him off balance. It was just basically announcing, okay, he's going to get the ball, or then this one, he's going to get the ball, try and stop them. And I think it's something you and I talked about before. There's always this theory I remember I attribute to Nick Saban, who said teams are going to get so small and so quick on defense to try to stop the spread that someone's going to come along and just load up with big bodies and talented running backs, and no one's going to be equipped to stop them. They just won't have the personnel. And if you notice, the Pats defense has stayed big because they were getting gashed with the run last year. So they've added, they kept Lawrence Guy. They've added a Davin Godshaw. Barmore's not huge, but he's stout against the run. Yep.
That's the thing, though. The NFL has shifted away from, I mean, you look at the mid-2000s, you think of like Vince Wilfork, you think of any of those big D linemen who were always out there.
Ted Washington before Vince Wilfork, for sure.
Anyone playing the nose tackle. Like, now they're coming out of college, if you're not a 6'5", 6'6", 300 who can run a 4.65 or whatever as a D lineman, you're not getting drafted.
Right. Yeah. Everyone's so anxious to find the next Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
With good reason. Aaron Donald's really good.
Oh, yeah.
That they're lacking those guys who could just, two gap and clog lanes, whatever. And you don't see too many guys, like Dante Hightower size, Bobby Wagner in Seattle. And so they've been so obsessed with being able to go, 3 and 4 wide at the corners that they just are physically unable to stop a power running game. And the Pats have started to develop that at precisely the right time. None of this is to say that it's smooth sailing all the way. They've got to take care of this, but it's weirdly just kind of fallen into place. Tennessee, and we're going to get into this with our guests. Tennessee is all of a sudden vulnerable. They're through attrition, through injury, or whatever, through Ryan Tannehill not having the Derrick Henry behind him, and he becomes a totally different player. So we were a little bit concerned a couple of weeks ago that they had to play the Falcons on short rest. Well, okay, you caught them at exactly the right time.
The Falcons look like they're always on short rest.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason the Patriots didn't have more interceptions, and they had 4, is the Falcons just ran out of quarterbacks for them to intercept. So like everyone they brought in just got picked off. I know AJ McCarron's on IR. I think if they had activated him and put him in there, then Devin McCourty would have picked him off.
All I have to say is, if you took that bet that all 3 quarterbacks in the room for the Falcons were going to throw an interception, you would have been one rich man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You imagine those odds.
And and while I do get all hacked off about people saying that Mac Jones is lucky and he's a product of the system or whatever, I looked up the passer ratings on the Patriots roster, and Mac Jones has the 4th highest. They've had passes thrown by 4 guys, and he's got the lowest passer rating behind Brian Hoyer and Jacoby Myers, and I think Kendrick Bourne he threw his first pass of his career. So maybe he is. Maybe that's the case. And if they just went with Brian Hoyer more, they'd be much better off. But no, everything is just setting up for them so perfectly. They've got these 2 huge games followed by the bye week.
Mm-hmm. That's well needed. The bye week.
Oh, absolutely. It's crazy that it's going to take.
It's been this long.
It'll take 14 weeks, right? We're at
14.
Okay, 14 weeks to get the bye. But you know what? If you can come through it relatively unscathed and with a quarterback who's holding up, even though he played 13 games as a senior at Alabama, so he's in new, uncharted waters for himself. That would be just a tremendous week to have before you play Buffalo again. It's just, by the next time we talk, they could have the number 1 seed in the AFC. I caution everybody, the only bye week goes to the number 1 seed now because of the new format. So this is just an insane ride that we're going through. And
what I'm hoping for is in this game against the Titans, I hope that we see Jonnu Smith come out of his shell and get comfortable finally in the Patriots uniform against his old team. I mean, Hunter Henry did it to his old team. So hopefully this.
Yeah. Never underestimate the guy who wants to show them like they were wrong not to pay him. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I worry because Vrabel's in that pantheon of guys who learned under Belichick that give him the toughest games. And really, they all have at various points. I mean, you go back enough, Eric Mangini, they once dumped Gatorade on him when he was with the Browns, and they were like a 4-12 team or something, but he got a flipping Gatorade bath. Got more recently, like Brian Flores has done a number on him, in between. God, who else am I thinking? Really, the only guy who learned under him, well, Romeo Crennel had some good games against him. Matt Patricia beat him a couple of years ago. Really, the only guy that he didn't have problems with was Bill O'Brien. He just coached circles around him and those Texans teams. But Vrabel, like, he can coach for me anytime. I mean, I've got the guy I want, but I like his approach. I like how tough his teams are. I like how they reflect him. They don't do a lot of dumb stuff. And every game between these two teams is fought in an alley with trash can lids and broken bottles. And I think this one's going to be no exception, even though we're coming off a weekend where Tennessee lost to a 1-8 Houston Texans team, which just was an absolute gift from the gods.
Some of these losses that have come out, like, it just shocks you. Like, it's just like, how is this even happening? You feel like you're in like the alternate universe watching.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can understand Pittsburgh losing to the Chargers.
Yeah,
that's a good team. But the week before they tied Detroit.
Yeah.
Like, in what universe, what alternate reality does Pittsburgh lose to the winless Detroit Lions at home? And actually, excellent segue to the greatest holiday that God ever created. It's if you wanted to design a holiday, it would be Thanksgiving. Because what is it? It's comfort food. It's no gifts. It's no decorating. You maybe dress up a little bit, but we're not talking formal wear. You might have to wear long pants,
a collared
shirt.
The Irish Rose doesn't make you put the tree up before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, she's pushed for that, but you know what? I'm like, to everything there is a season, and to every a time to every purpose under heaven, or however that goes. Like, I don't want the two bleeding over one another. As much as I like the Christmas thing and whatever, but it's like, I don't want Oktoberfest or pumpkin beers before Labor Day.
Yeah.
I don't want Christmas time beers until I don't even want to hear Christmas music until the Friday after Thanksgiving. And I know there's people that start putting that stuff on in October. No,
my mom started November 1st.
Oh God, she listened to like the FM stations that play at 24 hours a day.
All Christmas.
Dear Lord. Yeah. I love Christmas, but give it 31 days and you're fine with that. My tree comes down while I'm watching bowl games on January 1st. And that way I think I appreciate it more. The window candles thing, the wreaths that stay up until like May. By Martin Luther King Day, I'm knocking on people's doors. They're like, do I know you? No, but I'm here to take your icicle lights down. You and me. The wreath is on your door. Pick it up and put it in the trash. Problem solved. Okay. And yeah, so I'm like that with Christmas too. Like, okay, she likes to put on the Macy's parade while I'm cooking, and they'll have like some Christmas music there. Fine. I'm good with it. But no going to the mall on Black Friday, none of that stuff. We're going to stay home. We're going to morning drink. We're going to watch college football, and we're going to enjoy ourselves. So, yeah, I love this one. I don't have to travel this year. I love that the NFL went from a tradition I always liked. Detroit gets a home game, Cowboys get a home game, to adding that 50% bonus. I like the nighttime game. Yeah, because that's the one that you have, maybe you've napped a little bit and you're eating leftovers. Yep. And the nighttime game gave us, has it been 10 years now? How long has it been? The greatest play in football history.
Oh, yeah.
The butt fumble game on the 8 o'clock game. So yeah, Sanchez was drafted in 2009. So I want to say it was 2010 or 2011. I'll have to look it up and observe it, because it's one of the magical, it truly was the greatest holiday moment of all time. As much as I loved being at my mom's side and listening to her say grace, even she from the afterlife would say, yeah, that was a nice moment, but the butt fumble was really cool. So
I said that they wouldn't put Mark Sanchez and you didn't pick up on the butt fumble.
Oh, geez. Okay. Stupid me. I'd forgotten. You know what? I got this thing writing today about how the Jets have hired Zach Wilson's personal quarterback trainer, because the term that they used, it was a Mortensen report. The term they used was he's fundamentally falling apart. It's like they've so streamlined their operations. Like it took them 4 years to ruin Mark Sanchez. It took them like 2 years to ruin Geno Smith. Sam Darnold less than just about that time frame. And now, again, we're 6 games into Zach Wilson's career, and they've already got him fundamentally falling apart. The Jets.
Well, that sounds like
damn Jets.
Fundamentally falling apart. Excuse me. Sounds like the first game on Thanksgiving, the Bears at the Lions.
Oh, good transition. Okay. Wow. Yeah. You know what? That's the one that you're going to be visiting with your guests with the sound off on that one. Like what a disaster. I mean, even though like I have a soft spot in my heart for these teams that have been facing one another since like the Great Depression. Like there's something to be said for that, but like what's the pull? What's the appeal in that one? Seeing Justin Fields. Yeah, I guess that's it. There's nobody really on either side of the ball that's going to be a draw. That's one you put money on just to have a rooting interest, right? I mean, because you're going to have next to no fantasy players in that one. You drew the short star on that one, Fox. That's a dog of a game, but clearly you're not going way out on a limb to like the Bears in that one, just because I don't know, short of Jacksonville, I don't know that there's anyone Detroit's capable of beating right now.
I'm going to sound crazy here, but I want to kind of take the Lions. I want to take the underdog.
Okay. To win outright or just to cover?
I think the 109 on the Lions. I mean, I think they're due. I mean, more than due, but
certainly overdue. And but you know what? Then okay, I would root for that for the simple fact that Dan Campbell is such like a hardo. He's such a hard try hard, and just to watch him afterwards, like even when they tied Pittsburgh, he's just so proud of his guys. I'm gonna do my wide stance. My face is like a fist. I'm gonna sound like Jesse the Body Ventura.
He'd bring back the turkey leg on TV.
Yeah,
right after the game.
All right, so the next game, Dallas is hosting
Raiders.
Okay, now all right, now you're talking. Yeah. Now there's interest all over the place. Raiders are not yet out of the AFC playoff picture, just to keep it, local. Yeah. I mean, they're on the outside looking in at this point, but a team that still has a puncher's chance, I guess. I'm shocked by how ineffective Dallas was against Kansas City, who I didn't think had a great elite defense. They were turning the ball over. Dak Prescott, who, the Pats made him look like, 1999 Kurt Warner, just couldn't complete a pass. Everything was behind everyone. Every catch was like, like a web gem. You had to have the catch radius of Vitruvian Man Okay. People who are watching me go like this might know that I'm talking about the illustration by Leonardo da Vinci. But anyway, look it up, Vitruvian Man. And that's just not the Cowboys the way I picture them. I was astonished that they could look that bad. And now they're gonna have to do this again on short rest.
I think if the Raiders don't come out and establish the run game right away, it's going to be Cowboys all day. The defense is going to they're going to tear apart Derek Carr, and they're going to not let them throw the ball at all. And I think they're going to force them for the run.
Yeah,
So,
that's a fair point, and also Kansas City just pinned their ears back on him, and he never had a moment to think or throw, and I don't know that the Raiders are quite capable of giving him that kind of onslaught, because those weren't blitzes. That was just 4-man rushes, and Dallas was utterly incapable of handling. So feel like the real prize, though, is going to be the primetime game.
Yes, the Bills at the Saints. And honestly, I would love to see the Saints win this one.
Oh, you think?
I mean, New England would, but.
Oh, yeah. And Saints are in the hunt, correct? They're I know they're just behind Tampa for the division.
They were 6-4 as well.
6-4. Okay. God, the whole league is like 6-4, 7-4.
Yeah.
Okay. And coming off that Bills game, I think, I don't know that there's anybody that I would say the Bills are just going to walk all over them. You know what I mean? Like it's not that the Colts suck. The Colts, let's not forget, took them to the limit in a playoff game last year in the divisional round, that if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot a bunch of times, there was a couple of bad penalties. I think a drive got killed by like an offsides or whatever. They could have beaten them at Buffalo. But the way the Bills were utterly helpless, Sean Payton seeing that, and he's going to have a way to exploit that.
So hopefully, after returning to practice this week, after the tough Saints loss to the Titans, it would be huge on Thanksgiving night if Alvin Kamara came back.
Oh, yeah. And there's nobody I'd rather root for to beat the Bills from the other conference than the Saints. Like, total respect for Sean Payton. And again, he's a guy who finds a weakness like that and is going to figure out a way to exploit it. And as we learned from the Colts with the Bills, you don't have to beat them in some secondary way. If you can push them around, then I think they're utterly incapable of finding a second way to answer you. I mean, as we speak, they have the lowest quarterback rating against in the league, and they've still found a way to lose 4 games, and I mean, not to get too into the weeds, but one of the most indicative ways of predicting wins, actually the second best way, other than obviously the scoreboard, is passer rating differential. Like how, what your passer rating is, subtract your opponent's passer rating. The difference tends to be a direct link to, who's going to win. Right now, the Bills have the lowest passer rating against in the league. The Patriots are second.
Wow.
And the Pats are have the 8th highest passer rating, and the Bills are, I think, 14th. But the difference is the Bills are number 1 in the league in that differential. But that gap is closing. And over the last 4 weeks or so, they've really come to earth, and they should have buried this entire division a long time ago. And they're starting to play bad football at exactly the right time. And the Patriots are clearly the hottest team in the league for 5 weeks. And hopefully by the next time I talk to you, it'll be 6 weeks.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And they'll have widened their gap in the AFC East, and maybe even taken over the top spot in the conference, which would just be mind-boggling.
Yes.
Which, by the way, whenever we say mind-boggling, someone always wants to correct you and say, it's mind-boggling, idiot. No, it's just it's a pun. It's a malaprop. Get over yourself. So yeah, it's been a great few weeks. The Thursday nighter against Atlanta, while a mess because nobody should be playing football 4 days after they just played football, well, all 6 teams are going to be doing it this week, and I'm glad that we're going to see on Thursday. So, what are your plans, buddy?
I'm heading home back to Boston actually tomorrow, and then we host Thanksgiving at my house, so another no travel, which is nice. So it's
Great.
football all day.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad that none of that included, in helping out and helping to cook and cleaning and doing the dishes and stuff. It's like, yeah, no, I missed those days where it was just flopping out on the couch. The one day in the year, the Thornton women would come out and say, "Can I get you anything?" "Well, I'd like a cup of coffee." "Okay, sure. Anybody else?" "Okay." You try that the next day, and it's like, "What, do you got a broken leg?" "No, you get her off of your ass, King Farouk. I'm not here to serve you, but that one special day."
That's right.
You'd go to the high school game, drink early, find some bar, do some fantasy football trades with your idiot buddies, and then just eat all day. Oh, I miss it, but I still love it. Still love it. I'm sorry. I won't be talking to you till after the holiday, but stay in touch. And I think we owe a debt of thanks to the listeners and viewers of this thing.
Absolutely. Thankful for them.
Yeah, it's been great having a blast doing this. This has been a year unlike any other, and I'm so jazzed that we're spending an hour or so every week bullshitting about this. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week after the Tennessee game with a very special guest, which I'll keep to myself, but I'm really looking forward to having this person. I'm not going to use a pronoun. So, all right, pal. Well, that's it. Now I'm going to introduce our guest.
Right.
Get ready to roll the theme song. Guy formerly a big shot in Boston media, who's now worked his way up to NFL Network, and he was terrific to talk to. Here comes NFL Network's Mike Giardi. Thanks again from Nick and me. Let's roll tape. Mike Giardi, thanks very much for your time, especially on a holiday week. It's been, I think the last time we worked together was when we were doing the Patriots pre and post on what was then Comcast Sports Boston, and now is NBC Sports Boston. So really, really appreciate you having taking the time to be with us.
Oh, no problem, Jared. I know that you're a busy man. Brady, it's on TV. It's Monday Night Football. He's lost a couple games in a row. I mean, this is a tough time for you, right?
Yeah, as we're taping this, it's about to be kickoff of the Monday night game, and anyone who knows me knows that the Brady thing, I still struggle back and forth, and every time I think like I'm now self-actualized and that Mac Jones has filled the Brady-shaped hole in my heart. I still see him doing magnificent things some weeks, and I realize he just never needed me at all. It was all just an illusion.
Don't say that. He needed you.
This is why I need you to remind me of this, that I do have a life outside of him and his amazing bone structure and his dreamy blue eyes and his incredible accuracy. But no, listen. So thanks. I just want to say, like, you've always been great to me, to the point where if for some reason we start speaking French here, and I'm not saying we're going to because I don't speak the language, but feel free to address me in the informal tu pronoun and not the formal vous.
I'll keep that in the back of my head.
That's I think how you and I always saw each other.
Sure.
So taking the Brady thing, let's go. Especially because you're at NFL Network, I like getting taking a broad look at things and seeing the national perspective. We're 5 games into a streak where the Patriots have outscored their opponents 175 to 50. The math is easy on that one. That's 35 to 10 on average. Since the first possession by the Browns, they've scored 70 unanswered points. Is this what the Patriots are more like, or are they more like what they were when they went 2-4 to start the season?
No, I definitely think this is more what they're like, Jerry. And I'll just say this. I think if you look at the league as a whole, particularly the AFC, and you say, like, who has the best grouping on one side of the ball, offense, defense, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you don't look at the AFC contenders, look at the Patriots defense and say, that's the best group. offense, defense, all these teams, Indy, KC, Baltimore, go on and on. I don't know how you look at them, the way they played, especially the last 5 weeks or so, and not say, my goodness, like this unit is legit. And I think they're only getting better and better. I mean, obviously, if you're a Pats fan, you knock on wood because we know injuries are a massive part of the league and teams that are beat up, I mean, that's just part of what football is all about, especially now a 17-game regular season. But I just think it's coming together. And one of the things that I really like about it, and, having been around Patriots teams now for 21 years, 22 years, whatever the math is, you can tell there's a real genuine affection for one another. And I think that's translating on the football field. I think they're having fun. And look, it helps to win. But I think there is that whole thing that they believed even when they were 2-4. You heard it over and over again. We're not a 2-4 team. And now all of a sudden they're 3-4, 4-4, and on it goes. And you can just see that confidence building.
You know what? Yeah. And I want to circle back to that sort of team spirit or whatever. I cringe even as I say that because it sounds so like high school or whatever. But as to be clear, you're saying that their defense is better than Buffalo's offense, better than Kansas City's offense, better than, I'm trying to think of what the next best defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Kansas City plays the way they're playing, they're obviously a dangerous football team, but their offense isn't what we remember it to be. And even with their recent couple games, they won, they get the 5 touchdowns a couple weeks ago, but then this past game against Dallas, Mahomes turned it over 2 more times. They don't run the ball very well. I think that Patriots defense, 1 through 11, substitutes, whatever, I think they're the most complete unit in football, at least in the AFC.
So how did it get to this point this fast? You know what I mean? Because it sort of has felt like, I don't do a lot of true crime podcasts or shows or whatever, but you know how they all follow that pattern where they establish what you think it's going to be. And then in episode 3, there's a huge twist, but then there's a twist back. And I feel like that's what has happened here. Okay, so they were making just unforced errors early in the season, fumbles and, pre-snap penalties or whatever. But then they get to the Dallas game and couldn't make a stop to save their lives. It's one thing to make Dak Prescott look good, but they couldn't stop him. And then it switched on a dime. Everything we thought we knew about them changed. And to go a couple of weeks before that, the Tampa game, they had negative rushing yards for the game. And now their lowest total they've had since then is 120 yards. That's why I ask, is this more what they're like? Because it's unrecognizable, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, than it was, say, in mid-October. And I can't put a finger on what the change has been on either the running game or the defense. Yeah,
I think I went into the season, Jerry, thinking that they were a 10, 11 win football team. And maybe if they got above average quarterback play, maybe they delve into that 12-win territory. And then they start 2-4 and you start to what was I thinking? What was happening? But I think, I guess maybe I'm guilty of this all the time in terms of when you bring in all these people from the outside, thinking that it's going to happen right away. And I think you've heard from several players over the last month or so being we're learning each other. We're still sort of learning how the pieces fit, although now they're clearly fitting a lot better. And I think you're just seeing that improvement that I think we all wanted to see in September, but that wasn't realistic. And I'll raise my hand. I'm to blame for some of that thinking, but now to see it sort of come together. And I think the coaching staff too, we talk about the players learning each other. I think the coaches are learning the players. I think they're utilizing guys in better ways. I think communication is dramatically improved. I mean, I went into the year thinking oh my goodness, look at the Hightower, Van Noy, Bentley, Uche, Judon, even if Winovich sprinkled in there, they can do all these things with these pieces. They can move them all around. First month of the season, you're are they ever going to do this? Do they not trust them to do it? And now you're seeing bit by bit, piece by piece, some of these things are happening. Guys are switching positions and being effective. It was I'm trying to think who said it. It was in the last week or two. Oh, it was Wyatt Teller from the Browns. They're all pro, all everything guard. And he was he goes, you look at their defense and he's they have middle linebackers that line up on the outside and you don't know whether they're coming or covering and they can do both well. They take the outside guy, they move him inside. Is he coming, going? He does it very well. Like, I think you're seeing all those things come into play. And when you think about it, you can't, if you're a Patriot fan and you've been around this for 20 some odd years or covered the team for 20 some odd years, you can't help but think like, defensively, I've seen this movie before. I've seen the McGinnis, Vrabel, Bruschi, Ted, whatever. I've seen all those little pieces come together, and guys just look at each other and they know what they're going to do, and they're making plays. And I really think, to me, that's a huge thing. The growth of this team in the scheme and the system with each other has been massive in the last 5 weeks. And like I said, I think there's more there.
Yeah, and that is a fair point. And I was guilty of this. Like, let's say the Houston game. It was one of those throwback kind of games around from like, I don't know, 2009 and 10, where they'd take just some backup quarterback. In this case, it was Davis. So I thought
Davis Mills, yeah,
Davis Mills. But it kind of reminded me of they'd face like Matt Moore or whatever, and they'd have like 300 yards against them.
Right.
Forgetting that, okay, that was week 5 of the season, where. Or actually, that would have been after the New Orleans game. So like week 6. Yeah. Where I think the schemes they run are so complicated, and you get some pushback on the Boston media. Christian Fourier always says it's no more complicated than any other system he was in, and he would know. But it seems to me like it's complicated the way, like, I used to work with a guy who drove a Beamer, and it was a really nice car when it was working. But it spent so much time in the shop because it's a precision German engineered piece of, high-tech driving equipment, and it needed a ton of maintenance. And I kind of feel like that's how this team is on both sides of the ball. Is that fair? Like there's defensive scheme. Let's just stick with that. It's so complex that it's not a matter of just bringing in, Jalen Mills and Matt Judon and saying, all right, just go do what you were doing before. It requires a lot of precision. And once they've gotten this down, I feel like, this is what they are. It's just, it doesn't just roll out of the showroom and be able to do the things that it's doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, I think this is where we're sort of blinded by past success too, where you're like, you just expect it, like, oh, that's just the way it's going to go. That's just the way it's going to go. And it doesn't. It takes different guys, different amount of time to sort of react and adjust to the new environment and the system and playing alongside each other. I think, like you're seeing in the last few weeks, Kyle Duggar, who I think a lot of people saw signs last year and like, oh, this kid's going to be something. Then this year started and you're like, yeah, it's not so good in coverage. And sometimes he swings and misses on the big hits. And now all of a sudden, like, he's playing faster because he's more confident in the system. He's more confident in the guys around him, and he's annihilating people. He's covering Kyle Pitts down the seam, forcing him to give up on a route that Matt Ryan ends up throwing up there anyway. Gets picked off by Devin McCourty, a huge play in the game. Like, these are the little things that you didn't see in the first 5 or 6 weeks that you're seeing now. And you go back to that Texans game, like, to me, in many ways, even though obviously there was the Dallas game after, that was a turning point in the season, because if that punt doesn't go in the back of whose head was it? Whoever's head it was on Houston's team, like that was really a self-inflicted wound by the Texans. I think they lose that game. I think that's the way that game was headed. And that all of a sudden sort of, oh, wow, we got a little break here. Now we'll take it. Can we take advantage? And you get some points. Now you're starting to feel more comfortable. And Houston's going, oh, we stink. Like, we just punted the ball off the back of our head, and that sort of steamroll. Like, if they lose that game, do we get here? I don't know. You heard some whispers around that time about maybe, does this work? Did the guys make the right choice coming here? And some of that's overblown. Like, maybe one guy's saying it, and then you take it into this whole thing. But like, I think there was a moment where maybe it was teetering a little bit, but they got through that. And then, yes, they lost to Dallas, but they played Dallas tough, and they played them till the end, right? So you say, hey, we took Tampa right to the end. We lost on a 54-yard field goal that hits the left upright. We take Dallas to the end. We end up going to overtime and losing in overtime. Like, guys, there's stuff here. We can do something here. And then they built on it, and it's been impressive to see.
Well, without ratting out any of your coworkers, but feel free to name names if you want to. Do you know people that have, when they were 2-4 were saying, see, it's not Belichick, it was Brady all along, and now they're singing a totally different song? Because I live in this little bubble here where I mean, I can't go into a liquor store. Okay, I can't go into one of the many charitable
Yes,
endeavors that I take
absolutely.
part in, giving blood and care
Yes,
package to the needy. You know me. No, tonight, literally, I was going into a
for the kids.
liquor store, if you can picture that. And a guy just totally random. Hey, Viva la Stool. What's up with the Patriots? And I think we're all just in this bubble. So on a national level, the guys that you're encountering, have you met a lot of people that have done like a total 180 on this team?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were, hey, like it was going to take some time with Mac. I mean, me personally, I still think it's going to take some time. I think we're now rushing to this crazy conclusion on the other side with Mac, but like, okay, it's going to take a little time to get the quarterback up to speed and some of these pieces. And hey, remember, and the Patriots are the one who've been saying it for years, the team that wins in March isn't the one that usually wins in January and February. Like, so you heard a little bit of that. And I think, look, let's face it, most of the outside world, they've had enough of the Patriots. It's 20 years. It's way too long. Like, hey, this is a league about parity. And yet the Patriots win 6 Super Bowls, go to 3 other ones. They're in an AFC championship game basically every year for that entire stretch of whatever, 15, 16, 17 years. And I think, hey, I'd like to see somebody new. I'd like to crown someone like look at the Mahomes thing. Mahomes is awesome. Like there's no denying Pat Mahomes' physical ability. I think I like his personality. Like he's a fun guy. It's just like, he's someone that, yeah, I want him to be around for a long time. I really enjoy watching him play. But the moment he wins a Super Bowl, it's like, he's the best ever. Like he's going to win 7. It's 8, like 9, 10. Even their team was talking about like, this is just the beginning. And then we realized like, dude, it's really hard to win. It's really hard to win. And then the Patriots did it for all that time. Like, okay, now Brady's gone. Let me breathe. Maybe there's some flaws in the armor here, and you can take advantage of that. And then a year and a half later, they're ripping off 5 games in a row, and everyone's like, maybe the most dangerous team in the AFC, maybe a potential favorite in the AFC. Like I think it bothers some people. They want to see Mahomes again. They want to see somebody, Lamar. They want to see somebody else, Justin Herbert, ascend to the throne. And the Patriots are like, not so fast.
Oh, God. Two teams that they got way out over their skis on. One, the Chiefs. Yes. And look, legit, they won back-to-back conference championships. They worked the Super Bowl in there, earned every bit of it. Almost won a Super Bowl, a conference championship the year before, but the 2018 Pats stopped them. That's great. But they were talking about how many they're going to win. And, starting to throw out the D word, trying to talk about them in terms of a dynasty. And it's like, okay, so they haven't really started to pay Mahomes yet. Like, wait till that kicks in and he has nobody around him, or they're going to have to make it up somewhere. But the other team is Buffalo. And as you and I are speaking, and by the time this drops, they're in second place in the AFC. And this was supposed to be their division for the foreseeable future. And nothing brings me more joy than listening to the national shows, the shows on NFL Network, looking up the AFC playoff picture and saying, Pete Schrager, as we were speaking on Monday morning, said the Patriots are the number one seed to beat everybody in the AFC, or the team to beat, however you want to say it. So this is, I think, kind of if not the dominant attitude, it's sort of a prevailing attitude around the national media, correct?
Yeah, and look, I think if you say to yourself, like, who's the best team in the league right now, it changes every week, right? So I think we're always a prisoner of the moment, especially with this league. There's one game a week, so it's not like baseball where you're playing 162. You got 5-6 games in a week, and you're sort of like, okay, well, look, they lose a game to whoever, they lose a game to the Colorado Rockies, or they lose a series to the Rockies. It's not the end of the world, although maybe it is in Boston. But in general, like mostly, it's just part of the thing. But when you're playing a 17-game schedule, it's like that thing gets magnified even more. So like I look at the Buffalo, you bring up Buffalo and it brings you great joy. And I say they did everything right. Right. They drafted Josh Allen. And I'll admit, I was like, man, that guy completed like 50-something% of his passes at Wyoming. So his mechanics are a mess. He's not very accurate. Can they fix that? His first year in the league, I think he was at 52%. Then it goes to 59. You start to see maybe, hey, there might be something here. And then he makes the massive leap. Right. And now you're thinking, well, he's either going to maintain that level or he's going to go to the next place. and it's rocky. You just don't, it doesn't just usually go like this and stay that way. You have to go through some valleys, and they're clearly hit a little spot now where what's your identity? Did all the things that we did in the offseason to build to this point, the team building, bringing guys back, like literally, I thought, we talk about Tampa, they brought all 22 starters back, which is unheard of for a Super Bowl, right? I thought Buffalo did just as good a job in the offseason of like, we were this close last year. We know that the gold standard in the conference at that point was Kansas City. We're going to bring guys back. We're going to add this piece. We're going to add this piece. And you're thinking like the way it started, like, okay, they've put themselves in that class, but now they're hit with some adversity. And now we're about to find out what Josh Allen, what Sean McDermott, what that whole group is, that team, what they're all about, because now they're in a tough spot, right? They got the Patriots in 2 weeks on a Monday night. They got the Patriots again right after Christmas in New England. Like, okay, if you're that team, the team that we thought you were building towards last year, the team that made the AFC Championship game, well, you're going to show us in the next month, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Your season is now boiled down to this month, and what can you do with those 2 games against the Patriots? And
am I mistaken that the Bills didn't lose any coaches either?
No, right? Because
Okay.
I mean, everybody thought Daboll was going to be the Chargers coach, and then Staley gets in the building. They're blown away by Staley. They hire Staley, so Daboll ends up staying. Leslie Frazier was mentioned prominently for the Houston job. They go with David Culley. So yeah, they brought back all their major pieces. Their quarterbacks coach Ken Dorsey, who will be the next offensive coordinator likely when Daboll finally does ascend to a head coaching job. They got a wide receiver coach who a lot of people think is a future coordinator, head coach guy. Like, they're all there. So they have the same pieces. They changed out a couple of things, Emmanuel Sanders for John Brown, stuff like that. But like in general, the same team they had last year. And this is really the first time I think this group being thought of the way they are is facing this kind of adversity.
Yeah. Now that I think of it, neither did Tampa.
Right.
Neither did the Chiefs. I mean, this is unheard of. And I'm not aware of anyone leaving the Packers. So there's your Final Four last year. And yeah, the Patriots kept their coaching staff, but had massive amounts of roster turnover. So really, they're probably the team that has transitioned the most among the top teams in both conferences. And the fact that now people are nationally losing their damn minds about the fact that now they thought they were done. There was a great reaction on ESPN where Ryan Clark, this is like 2-3 weeks ago, says, you know what, I think the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl. And it was as if Rex Ryan had been shot with a bolt in the neck, like from a crossbow. It's like a poison dart hit him in the haunch. He like collapsed on the desk, and it was pure bliss. It really is, like, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been really emotionally invested in the team, or if it's always just been kind of some you tried to be dispassionate about. But you were in the trenches long enough to know that it's never just with this team. They're good, but you'd like to see someone else. Since really about 2003, it's been hatred. And like, it was weird at first, but now you just learn to embrace it. So the fact that now they're no longer being pitied around the league or dismissed or whatever, but people are actually losing their damn minds about it is the most unexpected, blissful thing that could have happened this year. And the fact that it's happened this fast this is what I'm going to be thankful for when I'm leaning over my turkey, Mike Giardi.
When you say your prayers, yeah, absolutely. It's funny too, because I think when you look at like, all right, look, we know what his persona is, the way he challenged the Patriots when he was here, and he does a couple teams with the Jets. They were really good teams, and they pushed the Patriots and they slapped them around a couple times. But like, he knows what he's seeing. Like, that's probably why he drops to the desk, right? Like, I've seen this movie before. I've seen these pieces like, oh, Matt Judon. Like, anybody could have had Matt Judon. You had to pay money for him, but anybody could have had him. And the Patriots convinced Matt Judon to come to a place where, remember, it's not fun to play, right? There's that whole thing. It's not fun to play. And he comes here and he again, not faced a ton of adversity other than the 2-4 start, but like after 11 games, you're like, maybe defensive player of the year, certainly a candidate for it. Like, teams could have had him. He's here and he's making a massive impact on not just on the field, but I think in part with the culture stuff. Like, he's a different dude and they love him. They love him for it. Like, again, going back to your like the team spirit type thing, as corny as it sounds, it's not high school, but there is some of that. Like, yeah, they're playing a game. There's business and there's jobs at stake and there's pressure from coaches and what have you. But there's also like, all right, we get out there now. Let's have a little fun, and they're having fun.
And as much as I have it on my driver's license that I will donate organs to Tom Brady and nobody else if he needs them. Like my liver is any good to a guy who drinks kale shakes, but there was a great moment that really speaks to it. That was so the opposite of like 2019. Remember where the whole season was a referendum on the body language of the quarterback. And does he seem like he's happy, and he's missing Gronk, and Gronk bailed out just because he didn't want to play for this team, and all on and on. And then Jacoby Myers gets in the end zone. And I, for the life of me, can't remember a celebration in a non-winning play in a regular season game in my life, and a life wasted in front of a television watching football games. And I mean, that stuff is genuine, right? I mean, I don't know where it comes from, like whether it's team leadership or the coaching staff, but every season is a different season. And that, I think, has come from, to my guess, the guys like Judon and the guys who came here, willingly as free agents, and they've created this culture of like genuinely enjoying playing with one another.
Yeah, I mean, respect for one another, like respect for the journeys. I mean, when you start looking at some of the players on this team, like how they ascended to the NFL and then in some cases ascended to stardom, like there's a lot of guys that weren't high picks, that were, late round picks or not thought of well in other places or what have you. Jacoby Myers, obviously not drafted. He's not fast. Like Brady didn't want to throw him the ball. And even last year, they didn't even want to put him on the field for a while. And then all of a sudden they put him on the field and he ends up as your best receiver after Julian goes down. And like, I think there's an appreciation for some of the work that they put in. Like, again, like Myers is the perfect example. Doesn't complain, comes to work every day, plays through injuries, not getting targets in the red zone, not complaining. Like, I'm in the league, I'm trying to get better. Like, I'll do whatever you want me to block. You want me to crack on a 260-pound outside linebacker? Okay, that's my job. I'll go do it. I may not love it, but I'll go do it because that's what, if that's going to spring Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson for a run, if that's going to keep me on the field, then I'm gonna put my nose in there and do it. And I think you're seeing a lot of that where it's just like, look at that guy. Like, let's go. Like, you got to elevate that guy. How can you not feel good for him? And I made a big deal of that celebration. And some people are like, I'm like, if you watch the league for as long as I've watched the league, and if you watch other teams, like, you don't see reactions like that every Sunday. You just don't. And I thought it was a really special, very cool moment for Jacoby Myers and for the football team. And again, just a sign to me that they're really all pulling in the same direction this year.
And kind of a lesser example too is, and it was a nice catch, maybe as good a catch as he made, but N'Keal Harry catches one. He's over by the sidelines, and a good like 4 or 5 guys like came up and like pounded on his shoulder pads. I think Dietrich Wise was one of them, and it's like, okay, now here's a guy who, you don't need to be told by me that he's underachieved in his career, and he's been the anti Jacoby Myers, but clearly he blocks his ass off, and I can't question his effort or his toughness or whatever, but his teammates clearly respond to him in a way that doesn't translate into big receiving numbers, but clearly no one's sitting there going, get a load of this guy mailing it in. Whereas if nobody was a bigger target of Brady's like resting, puss face than this guy. So, and I guess a lot of this must stem from a guy we've only sparingly talked about, and we really should discuss him in depth before we go. And that's the quarterback. What's your take on Mac Jones? Because he's filling that Brady-shaped hole in my heart. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It's got some space to still occupy there, but he's everything that I hoped he would be when I said they were going to take him back at the like 4th week of March. And even I'm like astonished at how developed he is already.
Perfect marriage, I think, of player and staff situation. Particularly, I think he and Josh, like, if you look at the other quarterbacks, I mean, like, if you're picking number 1, you're still picking Trevor Lawrence. And that's no knock on Mac Jones. But the ability that he has physically at this point in his career clearly trumps what Mac would bring to the table physically. I think we can all admit that. Justin Fields, there's more athleticism, stronger arm. You're going to look at all those things, but they're all struggling because when you look at the situations that they're in, I mean, Lawrence has got a rookie coach and the cast off offensive coordinator. He's been in like 4 different places. Fields has Nagy. I mean, I don't know how much longer Matt's going to be the head coach in Chicago. Trey Lance, was, and I don't blame Trey Lance for this, but like he didn't play any football, right? I mean, played at a lower level and then didn't play at all last year, or the one game that they had the COVID showcase. Like he has a long way to go. So He's probably in a good situation for him, but you could be looking at another year before he actually gets on the field consistently and makes an impact for that team. So Mac coming to New England, them doing a good job early of sort of not sheltering is probably not the right word, but like, all right, we're going to be careful with him. We're going to give him bits and pieces here. And then to have Josh, fully invested in this guy. And I don't think there's any question. No one likes to use the phrase, you're not supposed to compare him to Tom Brady. Well, let's put a little asterisk on this. No one is saying that Mac Jones is going to win 7 Super Bowls. No one's saying that. But there are things that Mac does in the pocket that clearly remind you of how they ran the offense for the better part of 20 years, and that remind you of a younger Brady. That's all. We've seen it. I have that reference point in my head. Like there are certain things that he does that looks like Tom did back in 2001, 2002. And for people that forget, Brady didn't become the Brady throwing 50 touchdown passes until 2007, 2008. So like, that's a nice sign for me, though, that there's some of this pocket presence and there's this leadership and there's this toughness, right? Remember when Brady came in, like that dude will just stand there until the last possible second. He'll take a helmet to the chin to deliver that pass. And you see Mac Jones week in and week out stand in there and deliver. I mean, he took a shot against the Falcons, blitz up the middle. Like he just
I know
stood
exactly
in there
the play you're talking about.
7 or 8 yard completion for the first down, right?
Yep.
But it was just like, that's the kind of stuff that when his teammates are watching the film, they go, he's all in. Like this dude is, he will stand there and he will get hit by a guy running a 4.40 and doesn't care. He's just trying to make a play. He's trying to help us win the game. And I think I give a lot of credit to some of the veterans on the team too, for sort of like, hey, they're going to be growing pains, but like, we believe in Mac. Like they turn this thing over to him. He's our guy. We're going to support him. And then he's making plays to show them and showing the toughness in the pocket that says like, our faith wasn't misguided, right? I mean, he can play in this league. Like he can lead this football team and he's doing it. And he's got the aw shucks and he's got the cliches down, and it's perfect. Like he's a perfect extension right now of the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And he's seeing the game, I think, the way the offensive coordinator wants him to see it for now. I think they'll expand that vision as they go along. But for now, this is what I want you to do. And they're taking advantage of the accuracy, which, I think that's for me, other than the stuff that you can't quantify, the leadership, all those X factor stuff, like, are you an accurate quarterback? Because in this league, we love the athlete that can run around, right? Like you get enchanted by these guys that can do these amazing things. But I'll say it till I've been saying it forever, and I'll keep saying it. When you play a really good team who has a good defensive coordinator and good personnel, they're going to figure out how to put you in that box in the pocket, and you're going to have to beat them from the pocket. So whether you're Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, these guys that are super mobile, whatever, there's a point in time in the fourth quarter where they're not going to let you do that. And you're going to have to sit there and use your brain and use your accuracy to beat that team. And I think we've seen points already this year where Mac's brain and his accuracy are good enough to beat teams from the pocket. And I think that's something that if you're a Pats fan, you start to pound your chest. Like that's a really good sign.
Right. Because I said, all along, like through the whole draft process, these other guys can do all these things. And that's why everyone's so enamored of them. But is that the only way to be an effective quarterback in this NFL anymore? And we're coming off a season where, this guy who wasn't athletic and, couldn't, outrun offensive lineman at the combine 20 years ago, just won a Super Bowl at the age of 43. And it's really surreal to me that everyone says, no, you got to have the next Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, who are good quarterbacks, but give me that guy who can process information and sense the pocket, which you can never teach. I mean, you remember Drew Bledsoe just never had that sense, that awareness of what's coming at him. And then, the intangibles, like being able to stand there and take a hit. You know that Jones has thrown 2 interceptions in the last 5 weeks. And you know what those plays had in common? He made the tackle on each of them. Now, I like, you can argue you don't want him doing that, but okay, I think if I'm, a defensive player or whatever, and I don't like a guy who's turning it over, but I'm sitting there and watching the game film on Monday, I'm going, look at him stick his nose in there and wrap up, just step on Gilmore or whatever. That's going to score points with me, and everyone's going to just know they've got to step. Especially
Josh McDaniels pointed that out, and he's like, we had heavier personnel on the field. Like, if he doesn't make the tackle, there's a good chance that guy's going all the way. And then, does that, again, you can't, it's the butterfly effect. You don't know what happens if he goes all the way. Does that change the whole thing? Does Atlanta end up winning the game? Are we not talking about this in the same terms? I mean, Teddy Bridgewater in the same moment, like, that's a guy cut back and he's like, I'm going to make the business decision here and I'm not going to do it. But they had bigger personnel. So now all of a sudden this fast guy's running away from everybody. And you were the one guy that had a chance to bring him down. And I get obviously everybody's situation is different. Teddy has gone through some horrible physical stuff, but like, I don't know, grab onto him with your fingers and hold on for dear life until the cavalry comes.
Yeah, lay down.
That's how I used to tackle in high school, 150 pounds. I just grabbed on and to wait till everybody got there.
Yeah, he jumped back like he was standing on the yellow tape and a subway train was coming in. You know what I mean? Like, yes. I that was a part of Jones that you can't tell through the draft process and measuring his vertical and how big his hands are at the combine or whatever. And I've been invested in this guy again since before the draft. I saw through that, kind of lens, him in training camp, getting a really good challenge from Cam Newton. Like, Newton legitimately looked like a starting quarterback, and the coaches saw it a different way for sure. And I'm happy about it. Did you see that in camp? Did you say, because you were there as much as I was, I mean, Did you say, I think this kid's winning the job, or were you surprised? I
was later to come to he was going to win the job thing, because Bill just kept being adamant about Cam being the quarterback. And I'm like, as long as he's going to keep saying it, like, I'm not going to just be like, he's full of crap. Like, at some point I have to take his word for it. But you could see, like, especially, I thought it was early in camp, because, obviously the spring, there were a couple moments in spring where you're not there. We're not allowed to be there all the time for the spring. There's one practice in particular in the spring where, like, Cam was the old Cam, throwing the ball at shoe tops and over people's heads, and Max slinging it all over the place and doing some no huddle stuff. And you're like, it's kind of early for that. Like, you're seeing some things, right? And then you get into camp, and I thought Cam was pretty good in camp, right? I mean, he's clearly more comfortable in the system. His teammates like him. His mechanics are still a disaster, but he seemed a little bit more accurate. But every day you're like, that other guy, he just kind of runs the offense the way they want to run it. Like, you had that feel about him. And then obviously when the whole COVID misunderstanding happens and he's out for 5 days, and Mac has that one joint practice against the Giants where he absolutely just destroyed them. And I know the second time around they threw some things at him, and it was a learning point for him, but it was like, he's capable of doing this stuff. And so what's the point with Cam then? Are you going to do the thing where, like, I thought, like, hey, make him play through Tampa and then turn it over to Mac, or just say, no, this kid is as ready as he's ever going to be, and we'd rather have him learn on the job. And I think they saw that thing again as sort of the intangible thing, like, make a mistake, then learn from it, and learn from it pretty much in the moment. Like, I marvel at him making a mistake, going over to the bench between series with Josh, and then that team throws the same blitz at him, and he sees it, and he hits the right guy this time. And you're like, that part of the game, that mental part of the game is hard, especially for younger players, because you're seeing things you've never seen before. It's not this complicated in college. Even when you're playing at Alabama or Clemson or whatever, it just isn't. This is your job. In college, you're supposed to go to class. there's girls, there's all that other stuff, right? There's things that are happening in the pros. This is it. This is what you do. You're there as you walk in the door, and it's, you're there from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then you're going home, you're having dinner with your girl, and then you're watching more on your iPad. Like, and this is the other part of it that I like. He's a little bit nuts. And I don't know that people know that, because he's got that, you're not sure he shaves, and he's got the squeaky voice, and like, he doesn't talk that much, his teammates say, but like, he's a psycho. And that's a good thing, because I think we've seen it. You got to be a little bit obsessive, and he's obsessive. He can't stand when he makes a mistake. He was beating himself physically, like pounding himself. Remember, during the spring and the summer, like he would make a mistake. Now he's trying to tone that down, because it's the whole body language thing that he's not trying. I want to show that I'm all right, I'm calm and comfortable, but like that stuff pisses him off. It just a simple throws. Like, I throw the ball 3 inches behind him, and he, Jacoby can only make the catch, and he can't run after the catch because I didn't put it in the right spot. That annoys the crap out of him. And I think that's one of those things. Like, I don't know how much you can measure it, but that's the kind of thing that I love, because I think that's I go back in the lab and I'm psycho. That next pass, I'm going to make sure I put my foot and I'm going to zip the ball there. And that's just the way it's going to be. And now I'm going to be, I got it. I did it. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I love that part of him.
An obsessive quarterback who's on this relentless pursuit of perfection, and has a dad bod, played for a big school, and also did some modeling. Like,
yes.
Okay, that sounds vaguely familiar. That works for me. And there was a moment in the Atlanta game where I think they were up 19-0 and they failed to convert. He had a keeper on like a 3rd and 1, and the cameras caught. You might have even tweeted this, but it was McDaniels and Brian Hoyer, like up in his grill mix, like just trying to. You could tell they were just trying to calm him down, as opposed to, I guess it's easy to pick on Jay Cutler, but him, slinking off the field with his droopy dog eyes after going like,
give me a cigarette.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I get a Marlboro Light over here?
Yes, and it drove Bears fans up the flipping wall. And so, the idea that we got to just kind of calm him down and rein him in, that's fantastic.
And Jerry, I'll say, like, to that point, like, you've heard it quite a bit now, and it's sort of like almost every week we're hearing it from somebody. Like, we're trying to get him to have more fun. His idea is fun is completing the passes, and fun is winning the football game. Winning the football game that gives me the most joy, and then I go right back in the lab and figure out what I screwed up, so the next week I don't do that again, and I keep helping us win football games.
If he didn't exist, I would have had to invent him. I swear to you. And I just briefly before Nick jumps in. So looking ahead a little bit, like the teams that are the biggest obstacles to them right now, still the Bills, because they've got them twice, who just got run over by Indy. And it's not like the Bills weren't expecting Jonathan Taylor to be thrown at them. It's like all they cared about was stopping him, and couldn't. And everyone hates the cliche now because it's so outdated about you got to be able to stop the run. But you see what happens when you can't stop the run. And the other team is Tennessee, who's still, as we speak, the number 1 seed, who couldn't beat a 1-8 Houston team. So are these teams as flawed as we think? Are the Patriots have an advantage to go? Is there a chance they can go 3-0 in the 3 games they have left against them?
Yeah, look, I think Tennessee, you're catching them at the right time. I mean, I think a lot of teams are catching them at the right time the moment Derrick Henry went down. But if you look at sort of Ryan Tannehill's body of work in Tennessee since he took over, he's been obviously comeback player of the year, playoffs 2 years in a row. His worst games have been without Derrick. And I mean, the impact that Henry has on that team, not just as a performer, but then what he, like constantly the linebackers are sucking up. Now it's Adrian Peterson, who's, 37 or whatever he is. And it's Donta Foreman, who was signed off the street. And there's another street free agent they got in there. And it's like, they don't get the same respect. And thus far, they haven't earned it when they've gotten their touches, which really complicates matters for Tennessee because they live off of that. So I think one of the things I respect that so much about Tennessee, and they won the 2 weeks prior without Derrick, is how tough they are. And I think it's a real credit that they're basically built in the image of their head coach. Like Mike is as tough as they come, and they love playing for him. He demands a lot, but he also understands where they're coming from. They've gone a little bit lighter in practice the last few weeks because they've been so beat up. So I think Mike will have them up for the challenge. I just don't know if they have enough bodies. I mean, right now if AJ Brown doesn't play, which I think is, it's way too early in the week to say, but that's in question. It's Nick Westbrook-Akini. It's a couple guys off they literally have no one at wide receiver. So you don't have your running back. You got all these guys that you've cast off, and now you don't have your best receiver. And Julio Jones obviously is on IR. So it's like, that could be a complete rock fight, but I like the Patriots odds in that. You're home, you're playing well. I think your defense is better than their defense. So, and then Buffalo there's a lot of stories today from the Buffalo media about that's a soft football team. So I haven't been there for all the games. I've watched them all, but I can't, and I've been on press conferences, but I haven't been to all the press conferences. So I can't tell you if that's the overriding theme for them, but clearly to your point, they knew Jonathan Taylor was going to get fed the ball. They couldn't stop it. Well, guess what? When they play the Patriots, good chance Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are going to get the ball. Are you capable of stopping it? Well, recent history says no.
Oh, hallelujah. Oh, happy day. Nick, what do you have for us in the time that we still got Mike?
So one of our favorite recurring topics is the tight end. And in the last game against the Falcons, our guy, Hunter Henry, only 3 targets, 2 for 3, no touchdown. Shockingly, would have won 8 games straight. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think Hunter has become sort of maybe Mac's ultimate security blanket. I know there weren't a lot of touches in that Atlanta game, but again, I don't think that's really. I don't think they needed it that much. They were working other avenues. They got Nikhil involved early. They got Aguilar involved early. Jacoby is going to produce that same stat line pretty much every week, 5-6 catches, 50, 60 yards somewhere in there. And I think you're going to see, and I think Dean Pease did it a little bit in the game, and I think you're going to see it going forward, is that the smarter teams are going to say, or smarter coordinators, I shouldn't say smarter teams because Atlanta didn't play smart, but they're going to say, when you get in the red zone, I'm taking him out. Like, you got to go find somebody else. And he did. He found Aguilar for the touchdown, right? So there's other things doing there. And for Jonnu, it's just been a tough transition. I mean, let's face it, that the game against the Saints didn't do anything for his confidence. Then he's been dealing with the shoulder and some injuries and missed a game. And, I'm not ready to give up on him because I saw some things from him in the spring and summer that I really liked. And I don't think we've seen those yet on the big stage. But if you talk to the people in Tennessee where he was, they said sometimes it takes him a little bit to get going. So maybe he's someone here in the back part of the year that can finally find his footing. And if not this year, then, he's on the hook for big money. So he'll be back next year too.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Mike, you've been generous with your time. You always were. Really appreciate you coming in on a holiday week. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? You home, or you're going to be?
Well, my son's got his last football game of the year. They got their Thanksgiving Day game against Medway, so we'll go to Medway for that game, and then we'll get in the family truckster. We'll go down to the Cape and see my parents, and carve up some turkey and eat like 7 different pies with them. Because it's really all about the pie.
Oh yeah, I went through 4 years of a kid in the high school football too, and and embrace it. You will never forget these moments, and neither will he unless he goes on to the NFL or something. Is that the guy? Yeah, okay.
He's gonna be athletically challenged. I don't know. There are too many 5'8", 150-pound guys who run 5 flat 40s that make the NFL, but
yeah, I had a moment where I realized, okay, 50% of this kid's DNA came from me. So yeah. High school game, you'll never put on the pads again. Just come through this alive. But awesome, man. I really appreciate it. My best to you and yours. And again, you can catch Mike Giardi on NFL Network, and he's one of the best in the business, and really appreciate having you. And we'll be back next week with yet another guest, and we'll have a Tennessee game to talk about, and the good Lord willing, the number 1 seed in the AFC. So he's Mike Giardi. He's Nick Fasoli. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Slancha.